Hi, Thea. Welcome to another episode of Cosmic Heartist. I'm so excited to have you back as always. Today, we're going to be doing an overview of November. This is our third month doing this now. I am excited to see what our intuition, both of our intuitions, have to share with us about these transits because they are pretty big transits. I was telling you before we clicked record that looking at November's astrology took me all the way into April, and you guys will hear a bit of why very soon. But before that, where are you right now, emotionally, energetically, and also would you mind sharing with me 3 words about how October has been for you? So we're recording this on the 31st of October. We've had the whole month to feel through. Happy Halloween. How are you doing?
Um, oh gosh, my body is trying to remember all your questions, but where am I right now energetically? Presencing, just presencing everything that's been coming up and also slowing the fuck down, just slowing all the way down. My 3 words for October are disruptive, revealing, and transformative still. And I think we're going to continue with this transformative theme way until November, up until April, you did say. Um, I feel, I feel like I feel like some sense, like some sort of stew. Like I've been in the stove for a while, and somehow I think I'm almost done. I'm almost cooked, like I'm almost tender, but not super tender, but getting there. Like I've been tenderized, macerated, and just getting all those ingredients together into a more cohesive taste, if that's making sense for you. Um, October was such a big month. We had that eclipse. It started with an eclipse, or it was in the middle of eclipses until we had that last eclipse in in Libra before the full moon in Aries. So it's been such a revealing, disruptive month. And but revealing and disruptive in such a good way because it's whatever needs to come up has come up and it's continuously coming up. Obviously, Pluto moving into Aquarius, which we'll talk more about. But yeah, interesting questions. Would you care to share your answers to your questions too? I'm truly curious.
Energetically, I'm feeling like there is so much. I
Mm,
am sitting with the wonderings of death and grief, and why
mm,
do we have to be okay so soon after we lose someone? Or why are we expected to be okay so soon after we lose someone so dear to our hearts?
mm,
And I am smiling on the outside, but feeling a lot of that in the inside. And it's the paradox and irony of life, isn't it? That we can hold both at once, but also I think it's okay to allow ourselves to get consumed by one for a little while, just because we don't know life until we know like the polarities of life. I asked Navs a question one time, a long time ago, which was, would you rather feel the extremes? And I think I asked you the same question, Thea. Would you rather feel extremes of both good and bad, or would you always rather be okay, like in the
mm,
middle? And for me, the answer is I would rather feel the extremes. I would rather know like the height of life and the total, like underground of life, even though it feels like shit, there are
mm.
gems. Like there definitely are gems. I had a dream the other night where this is a side note, but I had a dream the other night where my journal drowned in the seabed, and then the water moved all the way back towards a purple curtain. And as I was looking to pick up the pieces of my journal, there were gems, crystals on the floor, on the sand. And funnily enough, the crystals were the same or a lot of similar crystals that I have in my crystal box here. All of that to say, when we reach underground, when we reach the bottom of the seabed where there's no more water, we find gems. And so that's why I choose to experience the highest highs and the lowest lows, because I don't think we really find as many gems when we're just teeter-tottering in the middle, in the zone
Mm.
that we are okay. So that is my long answer to how I'm feeling energetically. For my 3 words for October, I want to say busy, heartful, and chaotic. Um, those are my 3 words for October. I think November will have a lot of depth and a lot of texture for us. And I think let's get into it. But before we get into it, I just want to preface by saying we are going to talk about the new moon and the full moon, and we're going to talk about planetary shifts. We will talk about aspects that the sun is making, but we won't talk so much about Mercury and Venus because, but actually, not because, um, a piece to add is that Mercury, as I was looking at the aspects, it would seem that Mercury is making a lot of harmonious aspects this month, while Venus has a lot of harder aspects this month. Mars is just making a couple aspects, so we'll cover that. But just before we begin talking about the dates, what do you have to say about Mercury making harmonious aspects and Venus making harder aspects, like energetically knowing what Mercury and Venus symbolize? What do you feel like this means?
I feel like, well, at the onset, Mercury is busy. Mercury has been busy, and Jupiter in Gemini is Mercury. Suffice to say that Jupiter is in Mercury's domain. So Mercury is actually one of the more important energetic principles or qualities, or at least the energetic qualities of Mercury are the more important as we navigate November and we navigate the shift of Pluto into Aquarius, and how that's landing in my body is where we are really given such potent words, right? Such potent invitation to transmute all the learnings, right? All the disruption, all the feelings, all the emotions, transmute it into words, into creative format that has something to do with communication, how we communicate our truths, how we transmute and communicate our wounds, are um how we're riding the waves of interpersonal dynamics through Mercury. And this is the last month that Mercury is actually a healthy, like moving Mercury, because Mercury is going to be in shadow again by December. And Mercury is going to be retrograding in Sagittarius, the sign of its fall. So we have this month to work with Mercury and to allow our heart, Venus, our lower heart, to tenderize itself through all these harder aspects and allow Mercury to bring us that joy, to bring us that curiosity, to bring us that opening to, the many ways that we can communicate what we have learned so far, because we are learning so much and we are closing so many chapters. So I feel like it's all these transit with Mercury is helping us to turn that into form, because otherwise, like, the easiest way that we can transmute something that we are feeling is through word form, because it's breath, right? We're sharing breath, we're inhaling, we're inspirare, we're inspiring, and we're conspiring through shared breath. And that is what Mercury is teaching us this month, I feel.
Yeah, Mercury, thank you for giving a brief overview of what's about to happen. Mercury is about to be doing some really interesting things, which we'll get to a couple days from where we're about to begin. Let's begin on the 1st of November with the new moon in Scorpio. The new moon always aligns with Diwali. So on the 1st is also the Festival of Lights. To anybody celebrating, happy Diwali. And the new moon happens in Scorpio at 9 degrees 34 minutes at 8:46 p.m. Philippine time. Um, I love that the new moon is on the first, right when the veil is so thin. I love doing energetic work around Halloween. Like it's just the purest, I think, that we can get just because of how thin the veil is. It is the purest, but it can also be the heaviest depending on how we're approaching it and how we are setting our boundaries and everything else to do with spiritual hygiene. But how are you feeling into the new moon that is opening us up into the month of November, which is about to be such a freaking transformative month? As you mentioned, Pluto is moving into Aquarius. This
Mhm.
is going to be a transit that lasts for 20 years. So this
Mhm.
is freaking huge. Like as we record this until um the 20th. So we have 20 more days of feeling this energy of Pluto and Capricorn. We're never going to feel it again in our lifetime.
Mhm.
And Scorpio symbolizes transformation and death and rebirth
Mhm.
and change. So to have this new moon opening up the month, how do you feel?
I feel like I think this cliche, this analogy has been worn out, but it's still so true. Um, Butterfly, like the cocoon metamorphosing. But more than that, what I've what this new moon is is showing, um is energetically showing me is the patience and the importance of deep slow time, because that's what Pluto is, right? And we've had this, we're closing a chapter of Pluto in Capricorn. It has been there since 2008. That's 16 years. That's deep time. That's 16 years of continuous evolution and transformation. And this is the first month that we're actually getting a new moon on the first of the month. So what that signals to me is a fresh new start and a fresh new beginning. We're planting seeds in the dark. And you did say potent um it's such a potent alchemical time, which is so scorpionic. And at the onset, as we enter this month, the rulers of Scorpio, both traditional and traditional ruler Mars, is not in a good place. It's not in a comfortable place because it's in Cancer and it's in front and shadow. So it's preparing to move backwards. The modern ruler Pluto is also in this liminal space. It's ending a chapter and it's entering into a chapter. So we're still in this soup. Right? I think we started this with me saying I feel like I'm a stew. So I feel like we are all being invited to feel into how we're actually navigating the liminality, the in betweens, and the tipping points, because we are reaching a tipping point in our evolution. And how are we holding space for that? How are we expanding our capacity to hold the paradox? You were sharing in such a beautiful share how we're understanding grief, right? With Saturn in Pisces, we're still here in this deep melancholy, this ocean of grief and this ocean of humanity where we're being taught so much. And this new moon is also in a harmonious aspect with Saturn and Pisces. There's a grand water trine again. We had a grand water trine the last full moon. We also have a grand water trine on this new moon. So a water trine means we have planets harmonious, in a harmonious, supportive relationship with each other. And these planets are Mars in Cancer. We have Mercury in Scorpio, and we have Neptune also retrograde in Pisces. Well, Saturn is also in Pisces. So we have all this water, all these emotions, all these feelings that are being brought up into the surface. And it was also so beautiful. You were sharing about your dream and how you appreciate going down into the depths, because that's Scorpio for you. Scorpio is allowing yourself to go deep into the trenches, deep psychological content and deep waters, because that's actually where you unearth hidden treasure. but you kind of have to do the deep dive. And the deep dive is the most uncomfortable feeling. Being in that darkness and that unknown is the most uncomfortable experience. But when you actually see that glimmer, those crystals, that the 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 light at the end of the tunnel, there's there's a new layer of security and worth that we get to appreciate, but only after the death, right? And this new moon on the first of the month reminds us that we are regenerative. Scorpio is regenerative, but we have to go through the death and transformation. And with that harmonious aspect with the water trine and all these movements of Mercury, again, we can apply this energy in our life by allowing ourselves to go deep in communion with ourselves. Where are we? Who have we become? Where are we going? How do we want to get there? I think these are important questions as we start the month and as Pluto enters Aquarius.
Yeah, I love how you just made sense of that dream as well. I think it happened a couple days ago, and of course, it's right around the new moon in Scorpio, and of course, that's Scorpio territory, and it almost feels like a gift of a dream, because it's like, I know you're going through all this hard work, but trust me, it will be worth it. You will see the gems, and just the fact that it was crystals from a crystal box that I already own, but they're inside the crystal box. I was like, okay, what is the meaning here? I love sharing dreams because I love getting interpretations of my dreams. But I love also how you said that we are regenerative. Like, we are. And as much as, let me give you an alternate cliche, which isn't a cliche yet, because have we had the conversation of dragonflies yet? Okay, so I don't think I've mentioned it on the podcast yet, but
Oh,
if I have, just bear with me. So we're all talking about butterflies, right? And how butterflies start as caterpillars, go into um, a cocoon, like deal with the muck, and then they turn into butterflies. Do you know how dragonflies turn into dragonflies?
larva from the
They're
water, they go to
from
land.
the water. They live in the water, and then one day they're like, "Oh, it's time," and they go climb on top of this like leaf or a plant. And my friend Kim likes to say that they backbend into becoming a dragonfly, which is so freaking cool, because when we talk about butterflies, they have seen the ground and they have seen plants and they have seen the air. When we talk about dragonflies, they've seen underwater, they've seen land, and they've seen air. They see so many different perspectives. And I think that with Pluto moving into Aquarius, a new way to see Scorpio rather than a butterfly, or as well as a butterfly, is a dragonfly, that we're not only seeing land and air, we're seeing water, land, and air. And we can comfortably live in any of these elements. That's what's coming to me for this new moon is what I want to say. Let's go into the third, because this is going to unravel a lot. So on the third, Mercury enters Sagittarius and will stay until, guess when? January 2025. That is a long time, you guys. Before I get ahead of myself, Thea, let's just talk about, what does it mean to have Mercury in Sagittarius? You know a lot about this, I'm sure of it.
For sure. So I have Mercury in Sagittarius. Mercury is not happy in Sagittarius because Mercury traditionally rules Gemini. And to be in Sagittarius, Mercury just likes to expand. It likes to learn. It likes to see the big picture. It doesn't like to go through the finer details. And that is a shadow aspect that we're also learning this month. And that's the kind of paradox and tension that we are needing to hold, as Jupiter is also not in a good place, although Jupiter is in a sign that is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is in a sign that's ruled by Jupiter. So they're kind of helping each other not be the best of each other. So they're helping each other unearth their
That makes
shadow
so much
aspects.
sense.
We're unearthing shadow aspects, which is so Scorpio, right? We're in Scorpio season after all. So because they're helping each other with their shadow aspects, we have an opportunity to refine, to review. Now, what is this big picture thinking? What are all these ideas? And how can we ensure that we actually have the capacity to go through the process of thinking about the strategy of all the possibilities that we are exploring? So I think that's a practical tip that we can remember, we can use as Mercury is in Sagittarius, and also a cosmic invitation. Dive deep into topics, into um I don't know, courses, topics, um books, art, anything that can actually inspire you to keep expanding your perspectives, because Mercury and Sagittarius can be so wise, but but as much as it is wise, it is also curious. It can also be curious because it only gets its wisdom through experience, through all these things that it wants to learn. So we can use this period of time to explore different topics, get join a book club, probably also explore different mediums of art and see what sticks and see what lands. It's an expansive time.
Yeah, I love this Mercury and Sag, and I love that it's going to be lasting a long time because, like you said, it's a great time to learn something new.
Mm.
And I think we can never know enough about anything. And it
No.
can be a trap, especially if we're trying to learn a lot about one thing. So I want to give a challenge while Mercury is in Sagittarius, and that challenge is learn something different. Learn something different than what you already know instead of furthering your education in the thing you already know so much about. Like, trust me, you already know enough about the thing that you think you don't know enough about. So instead of learning more about that thing, take up a new um take up something new and something that's exciting and something that will get your heart beating faster, something that will excite you more, because we're about to get a lot of masculine energy in the chart. And I
Mm.
think we've been sitting a lot, we've been marinating a lot, we've been turning into stew a lot.
Mm.
And there is nothing wrong with that. And that is totally some self care practices that we need to incorporate. But at the
Mhm.
same time, yeah, dip your toes into something new and see how it feels. And I want to say on the same day, there is this Mars aspect of Mars opposite Pluto. And is this one of the last aspects that Pluto is going to be making before moving into Aquarius? I think yes.
Yeah, it is. But this aspect happens 3 times. So this is the first one of three, and the last one while it's in Capricorn, and Mars is in Cancer. So it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting next 6 months.
How do we explain Mars opposite Pluto?
Let's start with an opposition. Opposition as an aspect is called an aspect of Saturn. It it carries with it a sense of polarizing energy. It's tension. There can be power dynamics. And when we talk about power, the essence of power is already Mars and Pluto. In evolutionary astrology, Pluto is our deep, deep soul desires. And while Mars is our ego desires. And why it's so aligned with power is there is empowerment or disempowerment when we get the energy and the drive to go after, or we do not get the energy or drive to go after our desires. So with this, with an opposition, we are being revealed paradoxes, polarities, so that we can harmonize and we can actually find center or find the balance between the two opposing forces. So Mars is in Cancer. Mars in Cancer quintessentially is seeking some sense of security and power within home, within it's emotions, the emotional roller coaster that Mars is actually going through Cancer, because it teaches us so much of emotional resilience and emotional metabolism, right? Like all these emotions and these water trines that are up in the air. We're getting a lot of water outside and inside. While Pluto in the last degrees of Capricorn, both of them are actually in the last degree. So the 29 energetic degree is the most mature, compressed of the degree, because it's like it's everything. It's the last 16 years. It's the last 29 degrees before it moves into the next sign. It's a test. It's it's a pressurized testing system. That's what's coming to me. It's like a pressurized testing quarters where life is asking you, have you really learned the Capricorn Cancer lesson of having a structure, having a system, building a home for your emotions, having a structure, being aligned with your purpose? Why are you here? The questions that I was asking as we started this podcast. What are you feeling? What are you doing with what you're feeling? How are you building a home for your emotions? How are you building a home for you? How are you creating boundaries and structures and foundations for who you are becoming? Can you answer these questions? And how rooted have you become in your sense of being, so that when Pluto actually enters Aquarius, we can expand into a new way of being, because we can share from a place of integrity and alignment. And so this aspect can steer a lot of conflicts, especially where we feel threatened or disempowered, where we feel insecure, and where we feel afraid. And it's an invitation to reclaim our personal power by confronting, by actually confronting and not running away, by facing what we need to face and changing what we need to change. Right? It's this transformation. And where Mars and Pluto in your chart um invites us to like find that center, find that sweet spot, because we're no longer where we are, we're not yet where we need to be. And this is where we're actually building muscle. So this that's why it's happening 3 times. It's not something that we learn in a day or 2 days or a week. It's actually an aspect that we go through for 7 months. So again, with the deep time, and again with the deep transformation and compassion, on the same day we also see Venus trining Chiron. And I think on October we mentioned that Jupiter is in this dance with Chiron also. So there's really a lot of ancestral karmic patterns, wounds, sensitivities that are coming to the fore, because this is the time. This is the time that we need to face it. We got here, and everything that we experience up to this moment were necessary grist for our mill, were necessary dirt so that our oyster can actually make pearls out of. So, what is your pearl looking like? What is your mill looking like? Are some of my deeper questions.
And I feel like the answers to all of the questions that you asked will be changing through those couple more oppositions. And
Absolutely.
also the next day, Mars moves into Leo.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's just a follow through of, if you are like looking at these structures that you've built for yourself, if they do fit, if they do work, then as Mars moves into Leo, it can be time to play, time to adventure, time to have fun, time to follow your joy. But if you're not, then it can also look like looking outward for validation, looking outward for a reason to do what you're doing. And that can cause way more harm than it can good, especially considering the way Mars is going to be moving pretty erratically for the next few months. So, an invitation to find your why. If there is one thing you answer, it is why. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your why? That's it. And just sit with that as Mars does everything that Mars does, because as everything else changes, one thing that remains constant, at least for a little while, is our why. and then it alters, and then it alters. But I think just having that anchor with Mars moving can do so much good for us, especially with Mars eventually moving back into water. So let's talk a little bit about the dance that Mars is going to be moving before we move into the fifth. So Mars enters Leo on the 4th and will stay there till January 6th. And then we'll move out and we'll return in April, like we were talking about. So this is why November's astrology took me all the way into April because of Mars. Mars is playing. So the retrograde begins in December. So for November, I think we can just feel into this energy of what does it feel like to have Mars in Leo? What does it feel like to follow our joy? What does it feel like to be fully authentic? Because then when Mars retrogrades all the way into Cancer, I think it'll be now, how can we turn our emotions into art? Again, my whole life for me, I think my whole life it's going to be about how can I turn my emotions into art as someone with um with my Venus conjunct my MC in Cancer, it feels like that. So it's just a question of how can we really dig deep into this underground and then use it as something to serve the collective, but not not a way to serve that feels pressureful, not a way to serve that feels like we're forcing or pushing, but instead a way to serve that just feels like soul balm to ourselves. Because at the end of the day, like Leo rules the heart, right? And it's just a question of, are we feeling our heart? Are we allowing time with our heart? If we are, we naturally will want to create art. Like it's just natural, right? You tap into your heart and all of a sudden, it's not all of a sudden, it's like eventually you get inspired, and once you get inspired you're like, wait, let me see, I can probably do this too. And so this month it's playing with all the things that we've told ourselves that we can't do. It's like, no, you can do this too, and all it takes is carving out the space to do it. If you've told yourself I can't paint, pick up a damn paintbrush and put it on paper, and you will see you can paint, because all it means to be able to paint is to have paint on the paper. And then the next steps is like you judging yourself about how it looks. But if you say, I can't write poetry, go write a haiku, 575. It's pretty easy to do that. Like, don't hype yourself up. I think the thing that happens is we just start hyping ourselves up, especially with Mars in Cancer, and a sign that Mars isn't really enjoying it. It's like, no, I'll just sit here with my body. And then it's like, yeah, but you need to move your body for that inspiration to come out. And it's like, no, I'll just wait until I really have to move. So with Mars moving into Leo, it's like, get your bum up. And if this doesn't make you get your bum up, maybe the deep dives of the next day will help you do that, because we have this trine harmonious aspect between Sun and Saturn. By this point, Saturn is still retrograde. Saturn's going to be stationing direct very soon after that. I have Saturn retrograde in my chart, so it feels nice when Saturn is retrograde. And if you too have Saturn retrograde in your chart, maybe that means that you put some extra pressure on yourself when that pressure isn't being put from the outside. But it also requires you to create structures that people have never seen, and people have no idea how that's your structure. They're like, if that were me, I don't know how the heck I would do it. But your structure just looks different because it's like this internal structure that it's like you've experienced, so you built it, and now it's there. And that structure was probably refined when Saturn was in Aquarius. And now that it's moving into Pisces, it's like, okay, now what did the structures look like for emotions? And the emotions are back. And not just any emotions, it also feels like deeper emotions, murky territory. How do we navigate our way through murky territory without getting stuck in the muck? Because Saturn hates to be stuck in the muck. Saturn would rather kick your ass and be like, go run. But with Saturn in water, I like to think of I mentioned this just when Saturn moved into Pisces a long time ago, which feels like Saturn in Pisces feels like Saturn smoked some weed and is like, I don't really want to do any work. I just want to watch some shows. I just want to dream. I just want to slow down. Time is an illusion. And then, even more, like when Saturn stations retrograde, or one Saturn stationed retrograde in Pisces, it felt more like a bomb rip, right? Which is like a more serious hit of like, wait, what is fantasy? What is real? What is illusion? Um, what is news? Haha, what is news? So like everything is going whack. But on this day, I want Thea to tell you what she thinks is a practical tip to do with the sun trining Saturn on the 5th.
Wow. I totally feel you with Saturn and Pisces, like Saturn smokes some weed. But then now it's about time. So we have this sun trine Saturn before Saturn actually stations direct. And so we have this beautiful opportunity as the sun, Scorpio sun, illuminating the muck in a harmonious aspect to Saturn, goes like, hey, there are some pebbles and some other crystals that are actually more formed that you can use as stepping stones so that you can build a pathway out of this muck that you're feeling. And hopefully, for those of us who have a lot of Sagittarius, have a lot of mutable placements, as Saturn stations direct, we might, I'm looking forward to it, feel more lift, feel a sense of clarity, have a better handle on our moods and emotions, because Saturn and Pisces can be very broody like Scorpio. It likes to brood. It has this limiting and contracting energy, and in water it compresses you into an emotional state. But again, because Saturn as our taskmaster is teaching us emotional resilience. So a practical tip that I'm feeling here is part of the questions that I asked early on. Take to your journal or take to your dreams. Like, how am I actually living in integrity and in alignment? How am I allowing my daily foundations to support my dream life? Because all of these emotions may be coming up because there may be some sense of subconscious or unconscious need that we are being invited by our higher selves to start meeting, to actually start stepping up and meet that emotional subconscious inner child need and grow up. Saturn energy is a lot about growing up and maturing. And so how have we matured since June, especially as it stations direct? Like, what have we learned around our emotions? How have we been building or not better boundaries to support our emotions? And we still have Mars and Cancer, right? So we're getting a lot of emotional tutelage the past couple of months and until the next few months. And so we can use this amazing day to recommit to our inner growth with more discipline and more self trust that the changes that we're making will actually have more lasting transformative impacts on our life and the life of others is what I'm getting here.
Yeah. I love how you said build stepping stones. I
Uh-huh.
think that's a beautiful way to understand this aspect. It's allowing us to build internal stepping stones. It's allowing us to build imaginative stepping stones. It's
Mhm.
allowing us to build daring and powerful stepping stones. So tap into that energy of Scorpio and Pisces, because these are the two smarter water signs, right? They've dealt
Yeah.
with more emotions. They have the bandwidth, they have the depth. So allow that depth to translate into your life. And then leading into the next aspect that's going on the 11th of November, Venus is moving into, this is not the next aspect, there are way more aspects, but a bigger thing that's happening is Venus moving into Capricorn and will stay until December 7th. And what that brings up for me is you were talking about, listening to our higher self. And I feel like Venus moving into Capricorn is asking us to turn that higher self or highest self into our most embodied self. Like instead of allowing it to
Mm,
be a higher self, bring it in, like root it, ground it, and allow it to
mm,
be the you that is most embodied, that is most alive, that is most present. Because in a world where there's so much talk about ascending and moving upward and moving out of our
yeah.
bodies and staying outside of our bodies, the biggest message that Uranus has to share with us, I feel like in Taurus for
Mm,
just a little more time, is come back into your body. Because once this Pluto shift into Aquarius happens, there is going to be a lot of disembodiment, a lot
yeah.
of energy, a lot of
Yeah.
air,
Yeah.
a lot of artificial intelligence, a lot of robotics,
Yep.
and what's going to be a prime commodity, like embodied humans. Who would have ever
Mm,
thunk? But
uh-huh.
yeah, so to me, with my short way of explaining what it would feel like to have um, Venus in Capricorn is embody your values, like live in
Mm,
integrity, whatever integrity means to you. Make sure that your thoughts and your actions are lining up to each other, if not for anyone else, for yourself. Because something that's coming to me with Venus in Capricorn is how often are you keeping your promises to yourself? And we're all, that's a deep hitting question because we're all definitely guilty.
ouch.
Myself included, right? So it, and then on this day, then it's a good idea to take note of the promises that you have made to yourself and list down beside, have you done it or have you not? Make sure you
Mm,
have the bandwidth and capability and capacity to do this
mm,
without judging yourself. Because if you do it without judging yourself, you'll actually get to notice a pattern. Once you notice the pattern, you'll be able to switch up the pattern. So
right.
on this day for me, or the whole time actually, that Venus is in Capricorn, I think it's a great time to just dip into what are the promises that you've made to yourself but haven't really kept. How about you? What do you have to say about Venus moving into Capricorn?
I love that. So Venus, that's going to be my Venus return. I have Mercury in Sagittarius. I have Venus in Capricorn. So kind of have a lot of these planets going back to my natal placements. What's loud for me, especially as we also complete and close this nodal transit in the axis of relationship. I mean, we have the North Node in Aries, and we have the South Node in Libra, and um, especially like last year, how Venus was in a retrograde year. Last year until this year, um, I feel like in the field there have been a lot of relationship shakeups. I mean, also Uranus is in a Venus ruled sign, so relationship shakeups, value shakeups. So with Venus moving into Capricorn, finally, and Pluto also in Capricorn, but in its final degrees, we have this beautiful opportunity to really allow ourselves to focus on the relationships, whether that's personal, or even business, like the relationships that are solid and dependable, relationships that are aligned, relationships that are supportive, that are nourishing, that are actually giving us safe space to bloom, to be real, to be who we really are, who we are called to be. Like these supportive nourishing relationships are very important and integral as we progress into the rest of the decade, and that is the lesson that we've been getting the past months with all these eruptions in our relationships. And it hasn't been easy for a lot of folks going through the breakup and going through the breakdowns. And with Saturn and Pisces, these breakups aren't just, surface level breakups. These are karmic soul level breakups and disruptions that are coming to the surface, and there can be a lot of grief because I don't. And when I say relationships, it can also be, most especially, it's our relationship with ourselves. So this breaking up and this grieving with a version of ourselves that no longer aligns with, the dream that we are building, that has a lot of safe space. I think the capacity and expanding capacities to hold safe space and self-care routine That's very important for us to fortify. This is also a great time for us to assess our financial goals and plan for long-term success. We're talking about long-term stuff here, with, especially as we start the month with a new moon in fertile Scorpio. It's Bealtiny and in another part of the world, so that's the most fertile, abundant time, while it's death and Diwali, Dia de los Muertes. In some other parts of the world, it's the axis of life and death. And it's also the axis of belief and non-belief. So yeah, how can we use all these to actually build better foundations in terms of our relationships and also our finances and our values?
So speaking of finances and values and grown up, mature things, on the 15th, Saturn stations direct at 12 degrees, 41 minutes, and Saturn will stay in Pisces. So little side note, I've been waiting for my dad to show up again, like just energetically. So as I was going through the transits, I was like, will you show up today, finally? And he did, because Saturn stations direct and stays in Pisces until May 25, 2025. That's my dad's birthday.
Wow.
Which is how I was like, ha, of course you're here. So Saturn stationing direct, how does it feel for you? To me, it just feels like owning up to all the shit that we have been sweeping under the rug, or all the stuff that we've just been throwing underwater. Like, no more throwing things underwater. It's time to kind of look at them as they are. It's interesting because I'm imagining how, like Boracay waters, right? Close to the shore.
Mm,
It's so
mm,
clear. But when you put something under, it has this like wave illusion on top of it. So it's like you see
mm,
the thing, you don't see the thing as clearly as you can, but you see the thing.
mm.
Um, so Saturn stationing direct makes me think of like we're very patiently pulling it out of the water and looking at it more closely and being like, oh, I see the beautiful perspective that and sparkle that the water was giving you. But when
Mm.
you're like earthed, right? The next day is the full moon in Taurus. So when you're
Yeah.
earthed, you're so much more um like you're off so much more use.
Mm, mm, mm,
Things can't really breathe underwater, right? Unless it's a fish, or unless it's like marine life, or unless
mm,
we have a scuba mask. But when you have a
mm,
scuba mask or an oxygen tank, there is only so much capacity. It's not like you
mm,
can have um, a forever oxygen tank, right?
mm,
So this is the invitation to finally be like, okay, I'm going to stop holding my breath underwater about this thing that I've been keeping underwater. Let's pull it up, let's hold it. And
mm,
as the next day comes along, let's see how it has changed up the way we show up in the world. Let's see the way it has made me feel more resourced, more worthy of more value. So we're
mm.
bleeding into days now. You can talk about both, but just to
Yeah.
be very clear on the date and time, the full moon is happening on the 16th at 24 degrees at 5:28 a.m. Manila time. So
Mm.
what do you have to say about Saturn stationing direct and also the full moon in Taurus?
Okay, I think I will bleed also on to the 17th after the full moon because Sun is going to oppose Uranus. So this is I think this is everything for the next days from Saturn stationing um, direct. And I think I already mentioned a lot on the Saturn, on the Sun trine Saturn. But what I'm feeling and what's coming up for me as Saturn stations direct is still more questions, right? Like deeper maturation processes because we've been at this, we've been in this retrograde journey since June 29th. And now that it's finally stationing direct, some questions that I feel called to ask are, um, and also let me just say, those are so that the what you said, your reflections are so beautiful. Like it's time to get all those stuff under the water to actually up. So again, like all of the emotional currents that have been rising for us to meet them, Saturn and Pisces teaching us emotional resilience. How did we go through, like, what training? Because it's time to take off our training wheels. How did Saturn retrograde train us to build that emotional resilience? And some three key things are with Saturn always alignment, authority, and integrity. How aligned are we with our purpose and our values? In Pisces, it's teaching us the values of our shared humanity. It's learning how to captain our ship amidst the ever changing, raging currents and tides of life. Are we taking full authorship of our dreams and visions? Are we also taking full authorship of the beliefs? Jupiter is in Gemini, of the beliefs that we have about ourselves, our self worth, our self esteem, our creation, our beliefs about life in general. And whether that's religion, let's not go there. That's a very heated topic. But obviously, it's the elections in that part of the world. And all these wars around beliefs and dogma, it's a beautiful opportunity for us to re-author the narratives that actually shape and form the structure of our lives. How are we living in integrity? We kept asking about integrity. How are we leading with integrity? Mars entering Leo. How are we leading? How are we stepping up into the stage of our life as this bold creative leader of our grandest creative project, our grandest art, which is our hearts, our life? And what areas were we shown that we are needing to build or strengthen our emotional and spiritual boundaries or emotional and spiritual practices? Saturn in Pisces is teaching us grounding spirituality as much as it's teaching us how to ground our dreams. It's really going back to the roots of our daily practices, our devotional practices. A lot of people are coming back to their faith. A lot of people are reimagining and rediscovering faith. What areas of life have shown you that faith is important? Or what areas of life have shown you that there are more things than faith? It's really up to you, but these are questions and contemplations. And also, how are we integrating our these lessons in our day-to-day life, which is actually where, the bulk and the brunt of all these things that we're talking about is taking shape and it's taking form. How are we stepping up as mature leaders of our life? And these are a lot of questions. These aren't questions that we answer in one day. These are lifelong, spiraling questions, but that's Saturn for you. And that's also, I did say that also spills out until Sun opposing Uranus, because after that full moon being ruled by Uranus and Venus, also in this beautiful soup with all these planets, what's being activated in you, and how are you being flexible? I think there's a lot of flexibility, there's a lot of adjustment, there's a lot of letting go of control and manipulation that's being asked of us. And um yeah, I think I'm going to stop there, and opening everyone to surprising revelations and breakthroughs, right? Saturn stationing still needs its cosmic coffee. I say this all the time. So just because it's stationing direct on that day, yes, we're going to feel an energetic shift, but this energetic shift is still going to be in another chaotic, disruptive soup as Sun opposes Uranus on the 17th. So be open to things that may be shaken and stirred in unexpected ways that can surprise us.
So on the 17th, we also have Mars trining the North Node. I love aspects to the North Node, especially when they're trines, just because I feel like there potential to like hop fates, like hop timelines, when the
Yeah.
nodes are involved, there's a lot of timeline hopping. So there's a big opportunity with like being authentic and knowing your why and allowing that to translate um, to what gives you passion, to what fuels your fire, and That's what allows you to create. I'm moving backward again because I want to bring us back in here. That's what allows us to create the material life, like the physical life that we would like to see ourselves in. And I'm moving backward because I just want to talk a little bit more about the full moon happening in Taurus and what that means. And I have my moon in Taurus and I love Taurus so much. But the one bad thing, or there are a few, but the one bad thing is the resistance to movement, whether that's physical movement, emotional movement, mental movement. It's like Taurus just likes to stay, like a bull that just likes to dig their like feet in the mud and just stay. And no matter how much you try to push it to move, it won't freaking move until one day it decides, oh hey, today feels like a good day to move. And then it moves. But like when other people are like, move, 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 the bull is like, no. And so in this whole story, you are part of the other people telling the bull your animal instincts to move. And the animal instincts are like, no, I don't want to move because I intuitively feel into when is the right time to move. So all of this is saying no when you're procrastinating, no when you're stopping yourself because you feel like you are too big, your energy is too big, your power is going to shine. No when you're not showing up as your brightest self, and when you're not showing up in line with your values, because that's also when you can know what are your values, how are you showing up in your values, how are you actually living the life that you want to be living. Are you creating vision boards? Did you create a vision board? If you did, go look at it. This is a great time to look at it and make things physical. Look at your bank accounts, like Thea said earlier, like check in on your finances, check in on your values, check in on how much you're pricing your offers, check in on everything that is dictating how you are showing up physically in this life. Because Taurus is very physical, but Taurus is ruled by Venus. So Taurus likes relationships, Taurus likes being valued. Taurus likes feeling worthy. But Taurus also reminds us that all these things don't come until we stick to our boundaries. Like none of it is possible until we stick to our boundaries. And there's a lot of fluidity, especially with all the Scorpio going on, especially with all the Pisces going on. So it's an invitation of how can we build those rocks around the water so that there's a way for the water to flow. So Taurus full moon feels very much like celebrating the things that we have done, celebrating the structures that we have created, but also putting in structure putting in place new structures and new rhythms that will allow us to continue to anchor in. And when I say anchor in, I mean physically create the dream life that we hope to be living. There's no better time to magnetize it. Would you like to say any more about the Taurus full moon? No? Okay, let's move
That
on
is
then.
perfect
We'll
and
move to the
beautiful.
19th. Thank you. We will move to the 19th, which actually is also the same theme of anchoring in this dream life, like claiming it,
Mm,
owning it,
mm,
changing it, noticing that the dream can transform. And I'm saying all of this because the sun is going to be trining Neptune. So it's like
mhm,
open up to ideas, open up to inspiration, open up to religion. Even we said we don't want to go into religion, right? But open up to religion, see what different religions have to teach you, see how they all actually talk about the same thing. And the same thing is that we're all one and we have
mhm,
so much to learn from each other. And when Pisces comes into play, it's like, how can we stop playing victim and actually open our hearts and be like, I know you went through something, hey listen, I went through something too. Tell me about your experience, let me tell you about my experience, and together we see each other, we create a new form, we create new ideas, and we just anchor in more compassion into the world. And I think there's nothing better than anchoring in compassion in a world that feels like it is going haywire and there's so
mhm.
much fighting, there's so much heaviness. I think there's nothing better than tapping into love, said like a true Venusian. Moving on to
Right.
the 20th. Pluto moves into Aquarius. They take it away because this happens till January 19, 2044. Yes,
Oh my
2044.
gosh, 2044. We have 20 years to learn Pluto and Aquarius lessons, right? So, not rush. There's no rush. There's no need to hurry. there is a need and a call to be aware of what's happening. So, what is Aquarius, right? Aquarius is the sign that rules innovation, disruption, revolution, liberation, freedom, but so much genius. And it's also such an expansive energy. So, technology, information, all these things. But as Pluto moves into Aquarius, I think it's important for us to know and important for us to ask a question. We've asked ourselves a lot of questions here, right? And the most important question that we asked you to ask yourself is your why. Because as we move into Aquarius, the bigger question here is how might I contribute? What is my what is the contribution of my bigger why to humanity? Right? It's so beautiful how Karina was saying, of course, let's anchor love, let's anchor compassion. And when we come from this space of love, everything that we are offering is always, always, always a contribution to also the healing and innovation and uplifting of the rest of the world, of humanity. So transformation is inevitable, change is inevitable, but how can we ride that in a very conscious and aware, in a conscious and aware state, right? And we've asked a lot of questions around integrity and alignment because Aquarius is also a Saturn ruled sign, so we're not really out of Saturn. There's still a lot of Saturn in Aquarius because as a Saturn ruled sign, it teaches us to it teaches us to be responsible of our contribution to our grander liberation, right? Radical fairness, radical equality. All these things are radical because we've never experienced it before. Doesn't mean to say that it can't happen because it's happening in so many parts of the world. And I don't want to go and dive deep into the system and how the system is blah blah blah. There's just this beautiful quote from Socrates that I keep quoting, that that I keep remembering, or at least trying to remember and try to embody is, let's not focus our attention on fighting the old. Let's instead focus our attention on building the new. Because where we're resisting the old is where it's also persisting in our day to day life. So instead of channeling that resistance to fight what it is that we're resisting, the oppression, the suppression, name your trigger. Let's instead focus on building our glimmers. So there. That's what I'm getting.
So there, as told by Thea. Okay, so we won't get into much deeper with Pluto moving into Aquarius because I will invite a guest to do a full episode on Pluto and Aquarius. You're gonna love it if this turns out the way I want it to. You're gonna love it. Um, and so okay, so Pluto and Aquarius. Do I want to say anything? Oh yes, I did want to say something. So I was reading Big Magic, the second time reading it. I love it so much by Elizabeth Gilbert. And the pages that I read either yesterday or today, the days are all meshing together at this point, talks about how she's talking to a singer about whether or not art is meant to be serious. And the singer says it's not serious, it's for fun because all music and art does is create diamonds for the insides of our mind. Wow. Like, can you just visualize that? Like diamonds inside your brain? That's what music does. That's what art does. And that is what I'm getting with Pluto moving into Aquarius. Like, how can we create more diamonds for people's brains? Including our own brains in the form of poetry, in the form of paintings, in the form of conversations. This is art. This is art in itself, in the form of flowers, in the form of plants, in the form of words that we use, in the form of like cooking, everything is art. And I think Pluto moving into Aquarius is going to teach us as a collective humanity that everything is art, whether you're an engineer, an architect, janitor, policeman, like everything has art to it. And like you said, when we do it with heart, it turns into art, heartistry. That's what heartistry is all about. And so through these next 20 years, I think we're all going to be having so much more pride and so much more joy about what we do, because what we do plays a role in the system. And the system is not the system that it used to be. The system is a new system. And that's what we're going to see all of us working so hard to build for the next 20 years. Moving on to the next couple of days, we have Sun moving into Sagittarius on the same day. Sun sextile Pluto. This is the first aspect that Pluto is going to be making freshly in Aquarius, just as Sun also freshly moves into Sagittarius, talking about Sag themes, similar as when we were talking about Mercury moving to Sagittarius. So this is about expanding your horizons, expanding your mind, going back into your beliefs, questioning your beliefs. When did you start holding these beliefs? Why did you start holding your beliefs? Who are the teachers that taught you these beliefs? And then owning up to the fact that you are your own teacher, your experiences are your teacher. Owning up to the fire, owning up to, this part of you that knows that your work in this life is to be your truest self and inspire every single human just by how true you're being. Like, that's my favorite thing about fire signs, and that's my favorite thing to say when it comes to fire signs. It's all about empowering, inspiring, being authentic, and living out your truest you. That's it. And in living out your truest you, that is how you are inspiring. That is how you are empowering. You don't even have to go out of your way to empower anybody, because just by seeing what you're doing, they're empowered by you. Which I also feel like talks about this aspect, which is a sextile between Sun and Pluto. But what would you like to add for Sagittarius season? It begins on 11/22. I like that number magic.
Oh my gosh. Everything that you said, right? Who is this? Marianne Williamson, what is your greatest fear? And if we allow our light to shine, then we unconsciously inspire others to do the same. Everything that you said, we are being invited into radical authenticity, because that is the way. That is the way that is our greatest service. Our greatest service is that our presence is our purpose. All these fluffy questions of what's your why are you here, what are you doing, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? At the end of the day, it's understanding, or at least at some way, shape, or form, to the level that our soul can understand wherever we are in the spiral of evolution, is how is our presence becoming our purpose. And everything that we're learning in the spiral, right? The fear, the self-worth, the self-esteem, or the lack thereof, the motivation, the demotivation, the empowerment, the disempowerment, are all just pebbles in our path, so that we can build castles, not in the sand, but in sturdier ground. And so this sextile, there is action. With sextiles as a transit or an aspect, it is harmonious, it is beneficial, but there is an action that is required of us. So what is this action, right? How are we stepping into our fullest presence? By becoming radically authentic. Pluto and Aquarius. Aquarius is a radical authenticity, a radical uniqueness. And with Sagittarius as a fire sign, goodness, this is the smoke that rises to the heavens. You cannot bind the smoke. You cannot. Sagittarius is unbound. It's just, it explores. It travels. It's actually the Milky Way. The biggest, one of the biggest black holes is in Sagittarius A. That's in the middle of the Milky Way, that expands to the rest of the universe. So just tapping into the energetic qualities of these things, these words that I'm saying. Goodness, how might we step into that? And that's my Sagittarius rising. Sun, Mercury, Uranus.
I love
Speaking.
it. I love it, because all of the same things bleed into the 25th, which is when the Sun trines the North Node. So we talked about Mars trining the North Node. Now we have the Sun trining the North Node, and I feel like that's even extra oomph to it's. I'm thinking of a trampoline, and
Ooh.
it's like a trampoline that allows you to jump so much higher. It gives you so much more gravity, and as I said, that my shoulder cracked. So it's it's a very it's a trampoline that gives you a lot of capability. I'm saying capability a lot in this episode. So that's going to be one of my November words. But it gives us a lot of capability to actually go and do it and be inspired and be inspiring at the same time and create what we're meant to do and go towards our purpose. And there are way more words, but let's limit words because the next day, Mercury stations retrograde in Sagittarius until December 16 at 2240. So it stations retrograde at 2240 and backs all the way up to 6 degrees. And then eventually Mars is going to be um, retrograding as well. And Mars's retrograde begins at 6 degrees. So some number magic is going on over here with 6 degrees of Leo. And, you know, the later, I think around 16-ish was very active when Venus was retrograding towards Leo. So the number six is very present with Leo and this energy of building and continuing to build and also give and take. You know, it's all about receptivity and like if things aren't working, it's about maybe giving more to open up that channel to be able to receive more as well. Anyway, so Mercury stationing retrograde in Sagittarius. How does this feel for you? For me, it feels a lot of, like we mentioned, like looking at the beliefs that we're holding, looking at the questions that we're holding. Where did they come from? What dictates our vocabulary? When was the last time you redefined words? When is the last time you were actually aware of the way the things that you're teaching yourself on a daily basis? Because okay, let's be honest, if we're on social media, we're teaching ourselves daily, because as much as there's trash on there, there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of stimulation. And just by scrolling, we are getting smarter because we are reading facts that we would have probably never read otherwise. So there's this question of, what are you filling your mind with? What are you teaching yourself? How can you become aware of what you're teaching yourself? Because that's eventually what's bleeding out of your mouth, right? The brain and the mouth aren't really that far from each other. So as we take things in, it's also easier to have those same things circulate out. So how can we be much more diligent about what we are letting in and notice, are these things that are allowing us to expand our lives, or are they things that are making our spark gets so light? And maybe part of this journey of Mercury being in Sagittarius will entail your spark becoming really dim. And the purpose for that is to realize what are the things that brighten your spark and to do more of those. Because we're not meant to be living life running dry. You know, we're not meant to be living life with our spark dim. We're meant to be giving ourselves time to get that spark back to being bright, whatever it takes. You know, I think if there's one promise we make to ourselves this month, it's, I promise I'll do, I'm looking at my calendar, and the title of this thing is called I Do Anything. And so if there is one thing that you do for November, tell yourself, I do anything to get that spark back. And what is it? What is it that you would do? Do that for November. How about you? What do you have to say about the retrograde?
My gosh, that's so beautiful. That is so beautiful. What's coming to me is, at a more mundane level, Sagittarius and Gemini are the signs that rule travel. Gemini, short distance travel, Sagittarius, long distance travel, and it's holiday season, it's Thanksgiving season. So if you guys are up for some traveling, if you're visiting family, just take some extra, I don't know, get an extra sandwich or a banana. Like, double check your booking details. Like, there's just some um some memes, contemporary, modern, Mercury retrograde travel snafus. These are highly probable just because it's in the sign that actually rules travel, especially long distance travel. So just be extra careful. Um, check, double check triple check. This is from someone who just had a traumatic travel experience. It's not Mercury retrograde, but I feel like it it's a big Mercury retrograde feeling for me. What's also coming to me as a big Sag, as a stellium in Sagittarius, is with your beautiful reflection, that calendar. This is a question that I always get for Sagittarius is, what is your I'm possible? Right? How can you flip the script of what you think is possible to actually believe that it's possible for you? And if you can do anything, which, apart from our Saturnian matter limitations, which we are also learning in this lifetime, what do you think is your I am possible? This is the moment in time for you to align with that. And like Karina said, you can do anything. So do it.
Which leads us to the 27th and the last aspect that we are going to be talking today. And it like just validates exactly what Thea says. And it says, you can do anything. So freaking do it. And this aspect is Sun trine Mars. Sun is in Sagittarius, Mars is in Leo. This is fire. This is, I'm going to go for it because I know it's going to bring me joy. I'm going to go for it because I know it's going to expand my horizons. I'm going to go for it because I know it's going to bring me adventure. Maybe it will involve a couple of missed flights. Maybe it will involve delays. Maybe it will involve detours, but I don't care because I'm in for the adventure. That's what this aspect says to me. How about you?
Beautiful, everything. So this beautiful aspect, it provides us a boost of confidence, provides us energy, it provides us motivation, and encourages us to take bold action to pursue our goals and our dreams with great gusto and enthusiasm. So yes, do that. Move forward, pursuing your dreams, especially the ones that most light you up, because this transit supports bold, decisive, inspired action. We were talking about the spark, right? It gives us the spark to show up in our most authentic and natural expression. It's Leo and it's Sagittarius. My gosh, a fire trine.
That's us.
Exactly.
That's us for you guys.
So here's us inspiring you. Like, just go freaking do it. Go freaking do it on the 30th. Then, like, get your ducks in a row. Like, just, right? Make your list, get your journal. What shadows have been coming up for you? I think this is me compressing November.
Yep.
Like, in a nutshell, allow all the tension and the revelation to get yourself in a nurturing, safe space to commune with your shadow, with your exiled parts, with your inner child, with your inner teenager, and be like, okay, what is our why? Why are we here? What are our dreams? What most lights us up? And then energetically feel into everything that you think is impossible for you in this lifetime. And when you get that energetic shift and jolt towards the end of the month, because like as we have that Taurus full moon, we are acquiring. So like, what are we acquiring? Are we acquiring extra knowledge? Are we acquiring extra self-esteem and courage? Like, bask it all in. And then when you get that energetic boost at the end of the month, go fucking do it. Just go freaking do it.
So to round up, what are your 3 words for November? Go fucking do it.
Go freaking do it. Yeah. And that would probably be me. Go be your I'm possible.
Love that. My 3 words for November are capability, spark,
Oh,
and boundaries.
beautiful. Go.
All right. Any last words? Thank you all for being here with us. This has been November. It is a fun month. I think it will be bringing a lot of changes. So keep yourself on your toes, whatever it takes. If it takes working out, go work out. If it takes sitting in your couch and eating chips, do that. Do whatever it takes for you to be able to brave this month, with love in your heart, compassion for
Mm,
yourself,
mm.
um, courage, and a big, deep remembering of your capability when you're in tune with your heart. How about you?
I second the motion. Everything.
Amazing. Thank you, Thea, for being here for another overview. We will catch you again in time for a December overview, which will look kind of different, but maybe pretty similar.
Thanks for having me. Have an amazing, amazing possible month.